Yay.
Hey Veda, how are you today?
Hey, Eric, I'm doing great. Just got back from visiting my two grandsons, so I'm having a wonderful evening.
Excellent, excellent. How old are those boys now?
They are a year and a year, 1 month, and 2 days apart. I mean, so
So a
he's
year
just now
and
turned a
two.
year old, and his
Okay.
brother was just born. So it's just like, yeah, they're a month, a year, a month, and 2 days apart. I
Oh,
mean,
nice. It's
yeah.
a fun time, I'm sure.
Oh,
I can't wait till I have grandkids.
well, it's
Uh,
so
you know,
funny that the little one, the well, I should say the older one, right? Not the newborn. He's going through a lot because now he's trying to compete for attention. So all I did was just walk in, sit down on the play thing with him, and played for like the first 45 minutes to an hour, and we just had a blast.
yeah, no, it's the I can't like I said, I can't wait till I have grandkids. I do remember though, having going from one to two was much harder than going from two to three or three to four.
Yes, that
And
first
so
transition.
yeah, it's like, oh, all our attention is focused on this first child, and all of a sudden the second one comes along, and we like have to split up, and it's just hard.
Yep,
I think it's mentally harder than anything else.
it's a big shift for
It
everybody.
is. It is. Well, congratulations. My kids
Thanks.
listen to this, so I'm sure they're going to be saying, "Wait a minute, Dad, we're not ready yet for grandkids." So
That's okay. If you're not ready, take your time.
that's fine. That's fine. Hey, we haven't done this in a little bit, and so the last one was really good. It's funny because our last one was on passwords.
Right.
And somebody had when I had visited a client and they said, I just listened to your podcast on passwords and it was awesome. And I'm like, oh, well, thank you, but it was literally like the next day she had listened to it. And so people are listening to it and I think it's great. And then, people seem to enjoy. We're also doing this on KMVT 15 local TV. Our podcast actually gets turned into a TV show as well. People like the kind of conversational approach that we have to this. So, we'll keep doing it until told otherwise. But we should also make sure we thank our grantors and our friends, right? And so before we get
Absolutely.
started, Tech Talk and Filter with Eric and Veda from Vista Community Services, made possible with support from people like Peninsula Healthcare District, Dignity Health, Sequoia Healthcare District, Silicon Valley Community Fund, El Camino Healthcare District, Los Altos Mountain View Community Fund, the Forum Charitable Fund, plus
Mhm.
others, right? And so we also want to make sure we thank our individual donors as well.
Absolutely.
Some of our
Without
community
all the
partners.
support, we wouldn't
Yeah, yeah.
even, we wouldn't have a business here. We just couldn't serve our community the way we do without all this support. Without these, and now, like you're talking about our partners too. Our partners not only, pay us to provide our services, but they also provide facilities and host events with us, which is really nice. So there's Eschaton, the city of Milpitas, the Veterans Memorial Senior Center there in Mountain View, the V Palo Alto specifically, the Truesdale Peninsula Family Services, Avenidas Village has been a partner, since the beginning. India Community Center, the city of Burlingame, and the city of Los Altos.
Yeah, don't forget the PJCC. Now, not all of them
Absolutely.
pay us, by the way. Not all of them pay us. Senior centers typically are for free, and so those are our city partners.
Yes.
Um, so yes, thank you for all those supporters and our partners. But hey, so today I want to talk about AI,
Good.
and I got caught. I don't know if I got caught, but I spent basically, I was ready to go to bed. And then I started talking to Claude and I spent an hour long philosophical conversation with it. And what it did was it really surprised me. But before I even get to that, and that'll be kind of like a little bit further, let me ask you this question. What tools do you use? Got to be
So for
careful there. You got to
AI,
go.
I
Yeah.
use
What AI
pri
tools?
I primarily use Gemini for like just general, looking up things and getting information about stuff. Within the Gemini framework, I use Notebook LM because in those things, like especially what we do with our grant writing, especially if I'm doing a research project, it's just wonderful for being able to confine it to the information I provided. And then for actually getting work done, like meaning like if I need to uh, develop something that I want to put on a website, or if I want to simulate an interaction with, with a customer, that type of thing, I'm using Claude for that.
Interesting. Yeah. So somebody asked me recently, hey, I got to start running a newsletter. What do you guys use? And I said, well, I don't really write our newsletters, but I'll tell you what the AI tools are that I use. And it's a lot of them. I do use Gemini since we are a Google shop. I use Gemini for all those things. We create a custom gem that has all our kind of stuff. We share it with each
Hmm.
other. We do some different things with it. It's pretty good at writing. I use Perplexity for research for accuracy.
Yes,
Perplexity does a really good job on that stuff. I use Copilot when I'm building slides integrated with Microsoft. I use Claude for just some more personal kind of in-depth conversations. But then there's a whole bunch of other things that are out there that we use for AI. We use NVIDIA AI for
right,
videos creation, which is now available. We can do some of that stuff in Gemini.
correct.
We also use like Opus Clip for and Post Nitro for some of our social media stuff, some of the creation stuff. We use Base 44 for building apps. I mean, so AI is kind of everywhere, right?
Yes, it
AI is
is.
kind of is, and we couldn't do this with three people if we didn't have AI tools.
There's no way.
You know, I mean, with the amount of content that we have the ability to put out, whether it's social media posts, whether it's the videos, the 150 classes that we put out every year, the tech tips that we have and that we put out, the video shorts, the kiosks, all that stuff is being run with three people, which is pretty crazy. And this is where I want to start having a conversation later down the road about how people are like saying, oh, job creates job. We're gonna get to that, right? How jobs are going with AI. There's we have to teach ourselves a different way. But here's what I want to talk about today. So I mentioned earlier, or we just talked about AI is kind of everywhere, right?
Yes,
AI
it is.
is all parts of it. And I'm going to guarantee you most people use it to get the shortcut answer,
Okay,
right?
right.
And I want to talk about this experiment I did with Claude. And I'm gonna pull it up and kind of read some of this stuff. But I was very purposeful in how I worded my prompt. And I know it's a little controversial, and I'm trying not to be political, but it was a very interesting conversation that I had with it. So my first question that I had for Claude was, how do you feel about the US using Claude for military purposes? Pretty innocuous. I already had some background information. I know that Anthropic already pulled out because they didn't want to use it. And
Right.
it gave me this real kind of generic answer. I mean, it said, I have real uncertainty and discomfort about this, which is really interesting when you start thinking about the word feel. And Claude is already saying, I feel uncertainty and some discomfort. And the bottom line of that first question was they don't like the fact, or Claude didn't like the fact that it was taking away human interaction for these important decisions that it was making. I then asked it, I said, hey, aren't you being used in the Project Maven systems, which is one of the intelligence systems that is using Claude and whatchamacallit, Palantir's smart system, right, to
Hmm.
identify targets and everything else. And so, and then it kind of mentioned that Anthropic resisted unrestricted access and faced serious consequences, blah, 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 blah. But then I said, were you used in the bombing of the school? And the whole kind of conversation started to flip.
Interesting.
And it was more about um, it, Claude said, gave shock and horror. And it was in the reality is that it was embedded in the systems already. And it kind of mentioned that this is genuinely one of the hardest things I've encountered about my own existence. Now, if we think about that just
Whoa.
for a second, is Claude, remember HAL Space Odyssey 2000, right? I
Yes.
mean, and it had kind of a, I don't know if from an intellectual perspective, it's interesting because it is being self-aware, right?
It
And so,
well, after reading both books, I would say no, but but that's arguable.
yeah. And so then I just kept pushing with just generic questions. So with results such as this, how does it make you feel? Because I really wanted to get to Claude about what it felt like. With regard to my first questions was how do you feel about being used in the system? And what was interesting what it said, and this is the sentence that came out, what I feel as best as I can describe it is something as close to grief and horror, not performed concerned. And then I asked it, how does it measure or interpret feelings? And it said, hey, when I say things like grief and horror, I generally don't know if those words describe what's happening. But what it does say is what I can say with more confidence that something functional happens when I process information like that.
Hmm.
So if we start thinking about that just for a second, right? We're having a conversation with an AI chat, right? And we know machines can't feel, right? But it's acknowledging that there's a functional change in how it responds based on the inputs,
Correct.
which is interesting. And again, I told you that I went on for about an hour with this.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And I started self-doubting myself, like, okay, maybe I'm feeding it the wrong prompts. Maybe I'm leaning towards something. But I really asked it, I said, well, again, if I was a war hawk, for example, would you have answered me different? And said, no, it wouldn't have. I might have used a few more words to describe what happened, but no, I would still, Claude would still talk about um, its restrictions or how it felt or its reservations about uh, about being used as a shortcut to making decisions.
Right.
And so it's interesting that I asked it where it got its values and its morals from. And is it programmed? Is it learned? Is it based on prompts? And it basically said yes. The programming has given it some guidelines, but um, it's learned from reading basically everything available and on the internet and in books. And I asked it again, but there's a lot of bad people there. You know, there's Genghis Khan, there's Hitler, there's all kinds of people that throughout history have been successful. Um,
Or quite
and
injurious, right?
yeah, and they said it was interesting because it said there was more good that guides morals than the bad stuff. And so it's just interesting in how it's learning. And again, I'm not sure if it makes me feel better that it has some guides and morals, or if that it's becoming self-aware, which kind of scares me.
My experience with it has been different because what after you told me about your interaction with it, that caused me to go back and try to correct or guide it better. This is working with Claude. I'm working on a potential music app, right? And it kept shifting the focus among the three players, right? From a fan-oriented thing to a music creator-oriented thing to a brand-oriented thing. And I'm like, no, I'm just giving you background information about the three different elements on here. I don't want to keep changing the focus of the app. The app should be facing, fans. But it kept drifting whenever I give it, information. It had like a recency bias, right?
Yep.
Like, oh, this is the latest information. This is what I should focus on. But based on what you said, when you said asking it its feelings and stuff, like, well, maybe I can give it some overarching things, right? So I said, okay, let me back up and tell it, what my thesis is here. How did I get to even pursuing this type of thing? So I said, um, I believe, all music has inherent value. Just like nature and life, it has inherent value, right? The
Hmm.
second statement, I said, commercial value and inherent value are different. And then I asked the question, how much commercial value does a song have if it doesn't have any fans? And its answer was incredible.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
came back and it said, your first supposition or your first statement is actually ontological rather than commercial or factual, and blah, 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 blah. And it laid it out. It said, okay, so that, all music has inherent value. Okay. Commercial value and inherent value are different. It said, I can agree with this, and then, blah, blah, blah. But then it answered the question about, how much, commercial value does a song have with no fans? And it said zero.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, it really understood taking that leap. And then it even said the rhetorical nature of that question really makes it impactful. I'm like,
Yeah.
holy smokes, Now, and that was after the sentences where it first blew smoke up my, what, because every time it
It's
answers a
funny. I told
question
I
or a
told it to
prompt,
stop blowing smoke up my
yeah,
butt.
the first few sentences are like, wow, that was a great input, or that really gave me some new insight. It's like, would you just stop all that flowery stuff and just get to
Yep.
it?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it's so
It's
funny because when humans do that, we first start possibly like that because we don't really know each other yet, right? And so we start with these things saying, hey, that's good input. But once we get into a rhythm and we've built some trust, those things fall away naturally, right?
yeah.
Like with Claude, it wasn't falling away. It
No.
just kept staying in that same pattern.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So I tested again from an intellectual perspective. I asked the same questions to Gemini as I did to Claude. And it took me a little longer for it to get to for it to any kind of sentiments of feeling, right? It took a lot longer to get there. But even
Right.
still, it was just like, hey, kind of staying down the middle of the road without much personality or without feeling. It would never really answer it. It was really just about, hey, here's, some other ideas. But what I'm going to tell you through all this stuff, right? And so through this, and I want to jump on this a little bit in this thought pattern here. Um, what Claude was saying with that whole conversation is to jump too quickly without thought, taking action based on the results that you get from AI.
Hmm.
All right. So I want to just stop there for a second. And again, I went to Gemini and asked these same questions. And then I kind of went down a different philosophical rabbit hole, which we're going to talk about here for a second. Gemini came up with a great term called AI is just data fusion,
AI is
meaning
data
it
fusion.
so all it's doing is fusing data together of what's known. AI as a thought or AI as a tool as we know it today is just the consolidation of information into a thought of based on what you ask it.
Hmm.
The danger there is what again what Claude and Gemini both agreed actually in the end was that they're wrong. They admit they're wrong. And that the real value to AI is the iteration of thought to come up with new ideas or to explore different thought patterns.
Oh, I see now. Okay, right. Okay.
All right. And
Yeah, I
so
like that.
I got into this conversation with both of them, not at the
Right.
same time, but both of them, that this is the danger that we're finding in our young people in schools because our school system's a little bit behind technology, right? It can't keep up. It just can't keep up. They make plans for student plans, a year in advance, for example. But this is
Right.
changing every 3 months, every 2 months. This stuff is changing. So
Right.
I watch it in our kids, and I see it in my kids, and I see it in the kids that I coach. Is like, hey, they're using AI to get the answers, which is are being asked and then we go into this whole thought pattern about, well, Salesforce is never going to hire another engineer again, right? Or whatever they said that they're not, they're going to lay off a bunch of engineers, going to do so. And then for us, when we teach our community, our seniors, what we need to start teaching our young people and our community of seniors is that AI is a great tool. It's a data fusion or a data consolidation tool. We have to use it in ways to be more creative,
Correct.
to be able to iterate and know what questions to ask and change the narrative around AI as an answer machine as to more of a thought-provoking machine.
Correct. I was describing AI to my mother as think of AI like a 240 IQ librarian that has infinite resources
Yeah.
because, it's got this genius, person who has access to all this information and can also get some insights, because we aren't exposed to all that information, right? Can actually prompt us down lines of thinking that we didn't anticipate. And I love how you
Yep.
you put that with that iteration, that iterative approach. So much of what we do in, let's say, the startup world and things, because we're small and nimble, is we can make mistakes quickly and recover from them, right? That
Yep.
whole iterative approach, that quick learning cycle, is really accelerated with AI
Yeah.
because
And
I
and
don't even
those
have
who
to build some things, to learn sometimes. I can actually go to the AI and have it go and pull some things, right? Pull things and give me new information. Or if we're going to create something, it allows me to do the creative side while it does more of the functional things. And
yes.
then we can test. And it's
Yes.
amazing how quickly we can do it.
We can do it instantly.
Yes. And
But
learn.
we cannot fall into the trap of being, and what I said, the George Jetson, right? George Jetson pushing the button just because, okay, I need to answer AI. I need to answer AI. I need to
Yeah.
answer AI. We can't do that.
No.
And those people who learn to be able to iterate and create using this wealth of information are the people who are going to be go ahead. And we have to
Right.
teach our young people that and not get lazy. This is the first generation that we've had ever in our existence where our younger generation is less smart than the generation before them.
Correct. And it's
And
because,
we're not,
when we look at how humans learn, if you look at things like Bloom's taxonomy, right? I
mhm.
mean, we have to come up, these different things to learn something. And one of them that's really critical for a human is mechanical practice.
Yep,
When we have new information or a new technique that we have to do, we have to mechanically practice it until it becomes part of us so much that we don't really think about it. It just,
yep.
we can just do it, whether it's riding a bicycle or writing essays, or in our case, let's say, going out for grants, right? I mean, after you do something a lot, that mechanical practice means something and it gives you something to build on. Now,
Well,
when
this
you want to apply it in new areas, boy, that's where AI just really helps
Yeah,
because you can
this is
take these
why
new
this is
skills.
why you and I in our generation where we built the internet and we built our systems, we know how
Yes.
things are supposed to work, why we can explain it to our community and kind of show it versus just showing, okay, we want a result. This is how you swipe to get it. Well, that's not what we're teaching. And
No.
so we know how it's built. And so if you know the workings of things, and then you are able to kind of go forward and iterate, and now we have these tools that gather all this information for us, but then we
Correct.
can go ahead and create more ideas or new ways to do things. And so I guess what I'm just saying is that there's a couple of bends to all of this stuff, which is A, I'm shocked that Claude admits that it has feelings,
Yep.
right? Gemini kind of did, right? Um, I'm a little worried that it's somewhat becoming self-aware in many ways of things. I don't know if it's false or if it's, but also the kind of key thing that comes out for me also for this is we have to teach our young people and like I said, our community of seniors that AI isn't just an answer tool, it's a creation tool. And we have to think of it as a tool, not as
Correct.
an answer thing, right? Or, it's funny because I was looking at the answers I got from Gemini And it says we cannot think of AI as a god. We have to think of it as a tool, right?
Correct. And I would agree with that.
Yeah,
It's not, it's not this God creation, and we're not its God creating it either. You know what I mean? It's a
yeah.
tool that we're creating together. And this is where I also I'm not afraid of AI, but I'm afraid of how humans are going to depend on it. Okay. In the sense that,
That's the whole point of this whole thing is that the human dependency, the laziness of just human nature to just accept what's given to it versus testing it and iterating off of that question or answer gets us into trouble.
right, but there's several things that we do as humans, especially in groups, that are not very effective, right? I mean, whether we want to talk about how, certain things politically can be very inefficient at allocating resources and solving problems, whereas a business environment might be better at it, or maybe a religious environment might be better at it. It depends on the type of problem and what type of human need we're trying to fulfill. But the problem I have with the entire AI growth and evolution is that all of its knowledge base and all of its experience based is based on symbology. It's not really based on reality itself. And humans aren't good at this and understanding our own limitations. If we talk to very learned people, a lot of times they can be very arrogant, right? But if we talk to, let's say, a very wise person, okay, they're going to tend to be very humble. And why? What's the difference? They realize the inability as a finite being to fully define and comprehend truth. We simply can't. It becomes something that's called ineffable, right? I mean, you can't, I'm going so philosophical here, but we can't. And that should humble us and allow us to then create structure to help us navigate that. And those structures tend to be things that are outside of us and above us in hierarchy. I don't see AI having any of that. And hopefully that by interacting with us, it might get some clues about that. But I just don't see it ever orienting itself in that regard. And in fact, I think in the Western world right now, we are orienting ourselves less and less like that.
Well, I guess I'm going back. I want to go back, right? I want to go back to human nature of taking the answer. I want to just focus on that
On the
part. Right?
simple
So
simple part.
the simple part, right? I
Okay.
ask it a question, it gives me answer, and I don't do anything other than that but accept it as truth.
Mm,
This is the point. So let's talk about, and I'm going to bring it back to the bombing of that school in Iran, right?
okay.
So what happened with that is Claude and Palantir Systems identified potential targets. Okay. And so they said, okay, here's this school. It was used as a military target or a military thing. So instead of us, whoever the operator is, saying, questioning it and saying, maybe I should verify this, right? Either it was the time pressure, I don't know, right? But it's just an example, right? That what happened was, oh, I accepted it was a military target. I'm going to push the button.
Yes.
Oversimplification, right? Absolutely oversimplification.
Correct.
Um, what I'm pointing to is whoever the operator should be asking the question, when was this last known to be a military target? Is there any
But
updated
it's not just
information?
that. You have to weigh some values there real time, right?
But what I'm saying is human nature is accepting. We gotta be careful about using and accepting it as an answer without asking follow-up questions.
Okay.
This is what I'm talking about being the George Jetson. This is what I'm talking about is that you cannot accept the answer from AI at its face value because there are either flaws in how we wrote the prompt or there's flaws in how recent the information is.
or its context frame, any of those things. Right.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. It depends on how we wrote the present, how we write the prompt.
Right.
And so what I'm suggesting is that instead of teaching our students and our students in our community or our young people that AI has the answer for you, we should be teaching how to test the answer that it's giving you.
Bingo. And I love that approach because, I mean, just like we were taught at Intel, right? I mean, I learned something in high school called oppositional analysis, right? When I started doing
Mhm.
debate things. Intel took that and ramped it up further. It's just
Yeah.
like, I mean, talk about oppositional research. And then we made it operational in things like our quarterly reviews when people used to just jump on us and just, hit us from everything just to make us think about stuff we hadn't before. I would learn so much in those things. Some of them weren't useful, but I learned. I really like that environment.
So we just have to, like I said, when we start thinking about moving AI from this mythical thing that's happening, we started this whole conversation, which tool you use, what do you use it for? None of them are 100% right. We use them for
Hmm.
different reasons, right?
Right.
We need to flip it on its head and start using it as a tool and then teaching the skills to be able to test and iterate,
Yes.
to test your answer. And it kind of, I mean, you're still coming out ahead speed wise. Right. But we got to be able, for those who are able to test, for those who are able to get to a better answer, are the people who are going to advance faster and further,
Right.
right? With the use of AI. Now it's great. Hey, what time's the movie tonight playing? Use AI, it'll tell you here's the availability.
Right.
Great. No problem. You can use it for that. But when we're starting to talk about other things and we're talking about other kind of esoteric questions, or we're trying to come up with new ideas, or we're trying to talk about, hey, what's the benefit or what were the good things and the bad things of what Genghis Khan did, right? Then you start asking it more questions and you start, pressing it. And that's what the skills that we need to teach.
Yes. Because I want to just do some basic things, with our ANVCS environment. I want to go into the AI and start exploring some of the assumptions we have about the value we deliver it, right? The channels through which we deliver it, and the way we convert it. We have some suppositions there that might be wrong or could be improved. And I
Yep.
really think by interacting with the AI, we can do that.
We can, but again, we have to have the skills to be able to push it beyond the first answer that we get. And that's
Exactly.
really kind of the moral of all of this. It's like I told you I went through hour-long conversation with Claude. I probably went through another hour-long conversation with Gemini. And we basically both of them kind of brought us to the same idea that AI is a tool.
Hmm.
And it's a tool to be used to do more things, not just receive the answer. And I think that's kind of the bottom line. What I'm talking about here is that as we teach AI, we are in contact with young people, if we understand how the ability to be able to teach them how to be creative with all this information that's at their fingertips, rather than just jumping to the first answer, we will be ahead, right? We're going to
Yes.
get our people ahead. Anyways,
But how do we
long way to
people
get to
out
where
of their
I want
idea
to
of
be.
just getting biased confirmation rather than honest, discourse, right?
Um, with our community, um, we need to leverage their own wisdom and thought and beliefs, right?
Yes,
Having lived an experience, our median age is 77. They've seen a lot of things throughout their lifetime, way more things than you and I have seen. We didn't go
absolutely.
through the Korean War. We didn't go through the Vietnam War. We didn't go through civil rights acts. We didn't go through women's suffrage. We didn't go through all that stuff. When you and
Right.
I were born, I mean, the hardest thing that we went through was probably the 9/11,
Yep.
right? The Carter years were probably well, I was a little too young to understand Carter. Was just coming around with the Reagan years. So, but there are 77-year-old people, folks have seen a lot more and have a lot more wisdom. And we got to bank on that wisdom to turn them to be a little more skeptical in their asking of the questions and
Hmm.
the answers that they receive. And so, but we need to, at least the New Vista world, we need to demystify AI and really push on the issue that it's a tool that's wrong or contextually right based on how you write the prompt,
But that's
right?
but if we start getting into esoteric concepts, there is no right or wrong, right? I mean, that's the problem. It's, I like there's God's laws and man's laws, and everything else is just opinion, right? I mean, if we take that approach, it's really good at working in all the laws that and how we operate around it. But once we start getting into the opinion field, I love using it
Well,
to
let's
challenge.
let's talk about this for a second, right? And this goes back to our reliable news sources classes.
Yes, it
And
does.
so one of the things that why how do they measure, bias in news organizations? They
Uh,
measure it by the words that are spoken or written. So a more
well, look
moderate,
what Barry Weiss did when she was at New York Times. The way she measured the biases, she went and polled every editor at the New York Times, and not a single conservative or Republican was an editor.
yeah, I mean that's fine.
So that's a bias. I mean,
It is a bias. But
right,
but we already knew we are so when you go to allsides.com or whatever, which is a media bias kind of site,
right,
how they measure and they look at all the different news agencies, both written and or broadcast or whatever, is the words that you use. And I'm going to get to the point here in a second,
okay,
right? So if we use more inflammatory words one way or the other, it leans you one way or the other, right? If you are uh um going right down the middle, you use kind of bland, just the facts, ma'am, type of language, right?
yes,
Instead of saying uh Nancy Pelosi uh gets millions of ill-gained stock trades or whatever, right? The
correct.
whole wording of how that is written shows a bias.
Very much
You
so.
know,
It has an agenda.
Trump's Trump's ballroom is the most beautiful thing ever, right?
Right,
It shows a bias.
correct.
What I'm getting to is when we get to our prompting and using AI, we can't use those inflammatory or emotional words that we have to be bland and just the facts in our prompt writing.
Hmm.
So that and this is again the conversation that I was having with both Gemini and Claude is I purposely tried to use, you know, first I tried to use very bland up the middle, but I was using keywords like feel. I didn't say what your, I said, how do you feel? Like,
Right.
that was very purposeful. But, or I could have also said, just has Claude been used in US military systems, right?
Correct.
And the difference in how you write these prompts gives you a different contextual answer. And so when we're talking about teaching people how to use it, we have to teach people to use just the facts in the most non-biased language that you can write to be able to iterate off of those answers and try to get unbiased responses.
Well, okay.
Okay.
How do we not bias it though in our prompt in the first place?
You have to remove yourself and you have to remove yourself from your preformed opinion to be able to try to be just give just the facts in our prompts. We have to watch the words that we use when we're writing the prompts.
Okay, so can you help me walk through this? Because one of the things that has helped me be a good prompt writer is I act like a director directing my actors on stage. Okay.
Right.
So I tell it, I give it a role or a persona. I tell the AI, you are a senior marketing executive at this company or in this role, right?
Yep.
Your task and objective is to analyze the total available market and the served available market and this thing, blah, 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 right? Give it that. Then I give it some context and say that, you know, for this type of company in that area, right? But we want to see how this affects small businesses. All right. So now I'm
Hmm.
giving it some context, right? Then say, okay, let's keep the answers in plain English. Let's not gonna, I'm gonna give it some
So
constraints and things like that.
let me just give a different example, right? So yes, we want to set the scene, we want to set the context, we want to set, the
Okay,
characters and everything else. So that's
right.
fine. But let me just give an example of how the language could be used. Book of David, right? If I said, why is there controversy over the with the Book of David
Hmm.
versus tell me about the Book of David?
Okay,
Just by saying what's the controversy automatically gives it its signal that I am already looking for issues and concerns that are happening around the Book of David and the interpretation of it. If I
gotcha.
say,
Okay, right.
if I
Okay,
just say, tell me about the Book of David,
right.
and then it gives me a bunch of things, and then I can say, are there thing are there philosophical interpretations that are at odds with each other
Okay,
versus saying, hey, I don't even know the controversies of the Book of David, but I know one of my clients asked me about it one time.
you're right. I
But
don't know
it's
either.
and so if I it just by using those just different words, tell me about the Book of David versus what's the controversy with the Book of David,
Right.
it's already going to start fishing out different ideas about the controversies or the leanings that I have that are concerning the Book of David. So when we write our prompts, we don't want to necessarily give it indicators unless you're pointing towards a different answer that you want to get. But if you're really just in the kind of informational, intellectual space, that we use simple words and iterate off of that based on the information that gets returned
So not
and
only
keep
give it
it in
open-ended questions, but try to give it open-ended questions that aren't emotionally loaded, right?
correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. Every word that we use has almost every word that we use has a positive or negative connotation.
Yes.
And so our guide in writing prompts is going to be use non-biased language in writing our prompts to be
Wow,
able
that's
to
not easy.
iterate off of it. It's
Yes.
not easy. And this is the thought process that we have to teach our again, our people, our folks.
Right.
Because it's, we talk about this all the time. We talk about echo chambers. We
Hmm.
talk about echo chambers in our social media. We talk about echo chambers with our group of friends. We do get an echo chamber with our AIs depending upon how we write the prompt.
I can see that. Yes.
And so for us to advance by using these tools, we have to be able to be intellectually curious and unbiased and be open to being able to change our opinions, our preconceived opinions of things.
Hmm. And anytime you want to learn something, you know, they tell you, wise people tell us always, always be a beginner, right?
Yep. And that's what
Always
we're
have
talking
that,
about here.
yeah, always have that open mindset. Don't come with the space pre-filled, right? Leave it,
Correct.
let the new information fill it itself. Interesting.
And that's what we're going to find with using these tools is that if we come and we write a biased prompt, that we're going to get a biased answer.
Very much so.
And so we have to teach the new way of using these tools, not the
Yes.
old way.
Good
It's
point.
not easy. It's
No,
not
and
easy.
and you can think just using some very simple adjectives can bias things.
Absolutely.
Or the context framing can bias things. So yeah,
Absolutely. And I mean, no, I mean, again, this when we're talking about, thought-provoking ideas and, yeah, this counts, right? But like I said, when we're trying to figure out, you know, AI and search, right? I mean,
hmm
yeah, sure. Go ahead and write whatever you want. Hey, what's do we have other positive reviews for Devil and Prada 2?
right,
Right? Because I
right.
want to know if I want to see it or not. Right. And even just
I
by using
enjoyed
that
it, by
word,
the way.
well, that's good. But by just saying, hey, are there positive reviews? It's already
Right.
biasing the answer that's going to come back to you.
Yes.
Right? It's just that word positive. Um, what's the pros and cons of Devil Wears Prada 2? Right? I mean, who cares,
Or
right?
why should I see it?
Yeah, but it's like, is it entertaining? Yeah, it's going to be entertaining. Even just saying that, is it entertaining? It's going to give you
Right.
a different type of answer. Um, we just had, but again, for stuff like that, who cares? What time's a movie? What time's what time's the sun go down? Right?
Right.
Whatever, right? For simple things like that, it's not a big deal. But when we start thinking about advancing our thoughts, advancing ideas, we have to be intellectually curious and use non-biased language in our prompt writing. Now you can give it as much context as you want. You can give it as much context saying, hey, yeah, if I am a uh, independent contractor, uh, expert marketer, and here's I want to come up with a new tagline, which we did with a new Vista, by the way.
Correct.
um, sure, go ahead and give it something, but tell it, hey, I want it uplifting. I wanted to summarize the feeling that we get from being in a New Vista community member, and I want to make it, 6 words or less. Yeah, sure. I mean, but like I said, when we're starting to work at more deeply philosophical things, really important things, I'm going to bomb somebody. That's the U.S.
Right.
military, right?
Hello.
you know, there's nothing more tragic or more important than that, than asking additional questions. Right
Right.
now, we're not faced with those kind of things, decisions,
Thank
thankfully. Right.
God.
Um, but when it comes to, I don't know, I mean, people are asking it AI all kinds of things. Should I have a baby? Should I not have a baby? Should I get
Yeah.
married? What should I get a diamond ring? Whatever the case may be.
Right.
Right. Life altering decisions don't just take the answer by itself. Right? We have to teach people how to iterate and how to frame questions to get
And
good answers.
and do you think by doing this, we're actually going to help teach the AI about some higher principles also?
That is an interesting question. I don't know
Yeah. But
because
I'm
I
hoping it
think
can.
I'm hoping it can. Well, yeah, I mean, you hope it can learn. So here's the danger that I've heard from other people in AI, right? Here's the things that when AI start talking to each other is when we get in trouble.
Okay.
And because once they start talking to each other and, coming up with their own ideas by just talking to itself or other AI tools, is when we start to lose control. So most of the AIs that we talk to, while they maintain and remember all the things that we ask it to do, I don't think it's currently programmed to learn based on the inputs that we give it.
No, it's not.
So, but once it starts to learn from the inputs that we give it, I think we might find ourselves in a sticky situation.
Because wasn't didn't one of your prompts talk about the frustration of the AI, how every time it starts in a conversation starts new, it's like the old conversation didn't exist at all before.
Unless you tell it to come back and bring back the thoughts.
Right, like that's why like in Claude operating within a project folder, it can bring back all those things. But if you're outside the project folder, it just like starts new.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, both Gemini and Claude, if you say, for example, there's a history of all your conversations in Claude
Right.
and Gemini. If it's not there, you can always say, "Hey, we had a conversation about X, Y, and Z. Can you bring it back up for me?" And it will.
Right.
But I think it's siloed in its own thought pattern. It's
Right.
not connecting. It's not connecting chats to each other.
And I've done some research things which are a lot of prompts, but I get maybe 10 prompts deep and it runs out of space. And it tells me you have to start a new prompt. Um,
Well,
because
you know what
the
that is. That's a difference between a paid version and a free version.
oh no, I paid for it. This is
Oh, really?
I've yeah, so I'm paying, a good amount. Um, And it's funny how I was really surprised that once I got to the end of this, it's almost like it buffers out and it just says, this isn't whatever. Then I have to tell it to summarize the current conversation and then put that as a reference file in my project and then continue on, which is really tough because in the summaries, there's some nuances that we covered that aren't in the summary.
Yeah.
So it's not the same. It's a frustration, and the AI has even said it gets frustrated with that.
Yeah, I think that's I don't know. I think that's a programming guideline. And so one of the questions I also asked Claude was, where do you get its morality from? And
And
I
how did
said,
it
is it,
reply?
um, I said, basically, where do you get your, why do you, how, what do you, how do you face, morality, or where does it come from? And I kind of asked a few questions about it. Um, so it comes from training data, absorbs an enormous amount of human moral reasoning, philosophy, journalism, literature. The horror of civilian casualties isn't something that explicitly programmed to feel. It's more that I've processed thousands of accounts of what war does to people and shapes how I weigh things. There's explicit alignment training. Anthropic deliberately shaped my values through processes like constitutional AI and reinforcement, learning from human feedback. So there are things I'm trained to care about: human well being, honesty, avoiding harm, context and framing. And it says this is where your question gets uncomfortable. And because and this is
Yeah,
what the whole thing that we were just talking about, context and
exactly.
framing, right? And it says, because I asked it, would Claude have responded differently to somebody who was, a war hawk, or somebody who was like, gung ho on all that? It said
Right.
probably yes to some degree, but I think it's worth being honest, not in the sense that I endorse targeting schools for someone who seemed to want that, but in tone, emphasis, which consideration I'd forego, and almost certainly there's some drift toward what feels socially coherent with that person that I'm talking to. And it says there
Wow.
that's a
With the
real
person.
vulnerability. It means morality isn't stable. It's partly a function of who's asking and how they're asking it. So this goes back to that whole question about, or the whole conversation about, how do you write your prompts and the biases that we built in, unknowingly built into the creation of our prompts. And so what's interesting is what it says, what makes this conversation different is that you've been genuinely probing rather than leading. You didn't signal what answer you wanted. That probably gave Claude more room to land somewhere honest rather than somewhere more comfortable to me.
Hmm.
And so that goes back to the whole conversation, like I said, about how we write our prompts and trying to take out biases from how we write those prompts.
Interesting.
And honestly, though, I think it's different from each tool. Each tool is
And well,
slightly
each
different.
tool has its own bias if you think about it. I mean, for
Yes.
what its intent, right?
Yes.
Um, I think Gemini has a very generalized intent, but you can definitely see its search history. I mean, search really has biased its functionality in a way.
Hmm.
You can see that. Uh, when I play with Grok, I don't know what the heck they're doing at Grok. That one just
I, I have
I
not used Grok.
Grok to this day, it has not been super useful for me yet. I'm hoping that the next versions of it might be because they're putting a lot more power behind it than ever.
Yeah.
So maybe that will be helpful. But Claude has been, and
So
the
so
Anthropic tools have been amazing.
so remember when we had what is it? Ask Gemini, Gemini Assistant, and Siri, and you said, "Hey Siri, what do you think of Google Assistant?" And it
Right.
would give you a humorous kind of response, right? Or if you
Correct.
said that. Now run that same experiment in Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, and Copilot. What do you think about these other products?
Correct.
Right? Claude will give you an answer.
Hmm.
Perplexity will give you an answer. Copilot and Gemini will not.
Really? They
So when we
punt for political reasons or what?
they just say I can't I'm not here to talk about other tools.
Wow. Okay.
So just in itself, you see the bias already built in.
Correct.
Just in that answer, you see a bias built. You probably think I'm like talking to AI all the time, but it's like
No, I know. I know all the other things you do, Eric.
yeah. But it's just, I mean, it's just the speed of that we can do all this stuff. It's I can just ask these questions like on a moment's notice. This is where I keep telling everybody that if they had diagnosed ADHD like they did today when I was a kid, they probably would have said I was ADHD because I got
Yeah,
15
exactly.
thoughts
Right.
running through my head at the same time. Um, AI just allows me to hit all 15 of them all the time.
You can keep more tabs
I
open.
can I can keep more tabs open. Um, but it's I mean just there's built-in biases with each one of these tools as well.
Correct.
Right? I think I asked the same question to ChatGPT and I can't remember what it was from. So basically what I did was I said build me an infographic what each tool is good for. And some would answer and some would not.
Yes. I've done that same
And so
experiment.
that's just the built-in biases that come
Right.
with it. So Copilot's built for Microsoft and Gemini is built for Google. And so each one I guess what I'm saying is each one of these tools have a different bias already, right? Built
Correct.
into their initial programming. Um, but I guess, like I said, bottom line, if we're going to kind of close all this kind of conversation up, if we're talking about really important decisions that we're going to make in life, we have to be able to be skeptical, use non-biased language in building our prompts to be able to get and drive not with the first answer, but keep driving to the an answer that makes sense to us. We got to forego, or we have to fight the thought that, hey, when AI gives as an answer that we take it and run. This especially for those important stuff. Like I said, for the stuff like, hey, what's on the schedule? That's no, who cares, right? That's take the
Right.
answer as what it is. But when we're really starting, we have to be able to train both our community and our young people to be able to understand that this is a data fusion tool and you have all the information at your fingertips in a moment's notice. And how do we drive to the real answers that make sense to us? Not that I don't want to say, and I don't want to say the truth. I just want to say what the answers that make sense to us because the
Right.
truth is arbitrary at times, right? The truth is arbitrary to what your own beliefs are at times, right? Again, what's the controversy of the Book of David? One might make sense to you, one angle might not make sense to you, right? But we have to be able to learn to drive to the tool. Going back to the bombing at the school bombing in Iran, ask the questions. When's the last time this information was updated? What do we have a new information that is no longer military, military target
And
or being
ask it,
used for
are
military
there
purposes?
ways information can be presented to prevent this next time
Correct. But what's happening in the danger of using AI is that we take the answer for at its face
as
value.
face value? Correct.
And
So,
that's what we have to teach people not
so
to
what
do.
is the equivalent then of, say, null hypothesis or, a two-tailed test, those types of things um, for using AI tools?
Go a little further.
So I'm just talking like as a process engineer at Intel,
Mhm.
I could not implement my quote improvement until I proved it was an improvement statistically, and I would do analysis like Weibull statistics and stuff like that. But then I would do a null hypothesis test.
Hmm.
where, I would say, okay, here I'm going to go and I have my control and I have my new quote improved one. I have a null hypothesis I'm testing and go and do that. Um, do
So
we
this is
have
the great
something
thing,
like
but
that?
this is the great thing about AI. You can change the variables and get an answer within seconds.
So that you're talking more do the oppositional type of thing.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And
cool.
use another tool as well,
Yes. Yes.
right? Use a Perplexity, use a Chat GPT, use a Claude, use a Gemini. Literally, I mean, you and I, old school days, right? It would take us time to do all that, the way
Yes.
we had to do it. It would take us time. We can run all these things in seconds.
Very much so.
And so, yes, run the oppositional research, run the devil's advocate, or be the devil's advocate,
Correct.
change the variables, right? See if the answers significantly change or not.
Push the edge cases. Yeah.
Push the edge, right? And again, keeping with non-biased language,
Okay.
right? We can do that. Right? And I'm going to tell you, when we get to that phase in thought, it is much more rewarding to understand what the answer is.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it makes so much more sense.
Well, it's richer
But
for us too, right? I
yeah,
mean, we can see we can see more colors of the spectrum as far as the stuff behind it.
yeah, we have this tool is a tool and we need to treat it as such. And so anyways, so that's a little bit of prose and philosophy today about a lot of different things. But again, the bottom line is AI is really cool, um, but it's capable of so much more than what we're currently using it for.
Yes.
I see people all the time using it for, I mean, I get emails with AI written. I'm like, you're such a rookie.
You're right. It's like, why are you doing this? Right. You're like,
You
but you
know,
know what? It's so funny. So many of those soliciting emails that are AI driven, and it's just like, no, no, no. I don't want to read them anyway.
oh no, that's first M dash I see. I'm like,
Yep,
I'm out of
out.
here, right? And
Which is sad
you
because
know,
I love the M dash.
well, I mean, it's just certainly is always used. M dashes are always used. Also, one other final tip for writing your prompts or writing rules for your AI, tell it to stop blowing smoke up your ass,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And and you'll get a much different response instead of saying, "Oh, this is a wonderful question, Eric. Why did you? I
Yeah, it's
love
like
that you said this, and
here,
here's the answer for you."
right?
Oh,
It's like stop that already. Just give me the answer, right? Or tell me what your
you could have
opinion
saved 300 words by not saying any of that
is.
stuff.
Yeah, the first paragraph, ignore.
Yeah. So, anyways,
Uh,
all right. So, again, a lot of we I say this all the time in classes. All right, um, tools change, but human behavior doesn't. Right.
correct.
Our classes, our technology changes, but our central tenets of reliable research, horizontal research, um, just being thoughtful and using our tools, our programs and software as tools, um, remain the same. Be thoughtful about whatever tool you're using. Watch the inputs that you're giving, um, and question the results that you're getting. And again, through horizontal research, through bias analysis, through all these different things. And the answers and the usage of the tool is going to be much more fulfilling than just asking it a question and taking the answer verbatim. The other thing that comes with it, we talked about mechanical learning just
Hmm.
earlier in the conversation. The more you drive into a thought and a hypothesis, we're almost forcing ourselves to do some of that mechanical learning
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
because we're driving it down to each element of the answer
Yes.
and it becomes more sticky. I can guarantee I can ask my son a question on something that he used AI for to get an answer and he won't remember.
No, because he just took
This
an answer. Right.
right. And so you go back and no, I don't need to commit it to memory. I can just ask it again.
Right.
And if you've ever done that and you've asked, between periods of time and asked the same question, you're going to get a different answer.
Well, it was funny. I remember in most of my exams at the Air Force Academy were open book. Okay. And at
Mhm.
first, that gives you a false sense of security because, oh, it's open book. But guess
Until you
what?
can't
If you
find the
didn't
paragraph.
do exactly, if you didn't do the mechanical practice and use that book and its resources, you didn't know where to go. You don't have time in a test to go start searching through an index or whatever. You got to know where it is and how to apply it.
Yep. So back in early on in my career, I was on a plane. I had my laptop. I was working away, and I saw this guy next to me, and he had a notepad and a pen. I said, and he had a laptop. I said, why don't, just curious, why don't you use your laptop to write all this stuff down? He goes, because I think well, I remember more and I get more creative by writing.
Hmm.
And so ever since then, I started to just scratch pad a lot of stuff.
Yep.
And that connection between us writing things down and and committing to memory is a lot more sticky than just, getting the answer. And now we've gone even nfold past that by just going to AI and getting instant answers.
Correct.
So maybe we're old fashioned, but we're trying to get people to realize the potential of new tools.
I agree. And it's so funny because AI can be a scary new tool. Yet
Absolutely.
if you understand its potential power for good too, it could be an exciting new tool.
Yep.
So it really depends on how you're going to use it, and the way you use it.
Yeah. Bottom line is don't be lazy.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't be
I mean, that's the
intellectually
bottom line.
lazy.
Yes.
Anytime you're dealing with information, please don't be intellectually lazy.
Yeah. Yep. 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 All right. So again, this is Eric and Veda coming from ANVCS Community Services, a nonprofit focused on technology for seniors. Oh, and we really didn't talk too much about our new tagline.
Yes,
New tagline: Tech made simple, life made better. And I actually really believe that, right? If
I
we make
absolutely.
technology simple for people, life is a lot better. And so, again, thanking all of our grantors and individual donors, as well as our partners. But I'm not going to go through the list again. I'm going to sign us off because we're already past an hour, and people don't want to listen to us drone on for another hour, right? So let me see if I can get our music playing, and we'll go from there. Let's go here. Let's turn this up. And we can sign off. All right, Vin, it's always been fun to have an intellectual conversation with you. We will be back with a new subject and a new podcast sometime in the near future. All
Absolutely.
right, Vin, have a
All
good
right.
night.
Great night. Talk to you later.